The Zephyrian Empire's Galactic Acquisition Department occupied 17 floors of a crystalline tower that spiraled through 3 dimensions and occasionally leaked into a fourth when the janitorial staff forgot to tighten the reality seals. On the 12th floor, Sub-Deputy Commander Blisk stared at his holographic display with the kind of intense focus typically reserved for tax audits or watching paint dry in zero gravity. Form 847-B. Preliminary planetary assessment, he muttered, his 6 arms working with mechanical precision across multiple keyboards. 2 arms typed. 2 arms stamped documents. 1 arm held his regulation-issue stimulant beverage, and the 6th arm scratched behind what my chair would be called an ear, but looked more like a crystalline antenna that had gone through a blender. The display showed a small blue-green planet spinning lazily in space, blissfully unaware that it was about to become the subject of the most thoroughly documented invasion in galactic history. Earth, according to preliminary scans, barely registered on the threat assessment scale. It ranked somewhere between houseplant and mildly irritating cosmic dust. Clicks. Bliss called to his efficiency specialist, a being that resembled a filing cabinet crossed with an octopus and had the personality to match. What's the current status on the Earth acquisition? Clix's tentacles rustled through 17 different clipboards simultaneously. All forms are in triplicate, sir. Environmental impact assessment is pending approval from the Department of Atmospheric Modification. The Cultural Preservation Committee wants to know if we should save any of their art, and legal requires we file a galactic court notice 30 standard cycles before deployment. Excellent. Blisk's mandibles clicked in what passed for satisfaction among his species. And the resistance potential? Minimal to non-existent, sir. Clix consulted another clipboard. Primary weapons appear to be pointed metal sticks and primitive explosive devices. Their most advanced technology involves sending messages through something called electronic mail, which our computers estimate is roughly equivalent to our ancestors' smoke signals. Senior Administrator Vorthak, who had been quietly reviewing budget allocations in the corner, looked up from his calculations. Vorthak belonged to a species that had evolved from accountants, a fact that explained both his obsession with decimal points and his complete inability to understand concepts like fun or vacation time. The cost-benefit analysis is quite favorable, Vorthak announced, adjusting his spectacles that had somehow evolved as part of his anatomy. Labor acquisition costs are projected at 0.3% of standard rates. The species shows remarkable adaptability to repetitive tasks and almost pathological need to organize things into categories. They've even created something called middle management, which appears to be a self-replicating administrator class. Blisk nodded approvingly. Population size? Approximately 7 billion potential units, Clix reported. They're remarkably efficient at reproduction, though they seem to have developed numerous cultural rituals around the process that slow things down considerably. Something called dating, which involves elaborate deception protocols and exchange of vegetation. Fascinating. Military capabilities? Their primary strategy appears to be arguing with each other until their enemies die of old age, Vorthak noted. They've divided themselves into roughly 200 territorial units and spend most of their energy in what they call meetings, which our xenopsychologists believe may be a form of ritualized combat. Blisk's efficiency-trained mind was already calculating deployment schedules. Standard protocol, then. File Form 923, X for orbital intimidation display, Form 441, C for surrender demand broadcast, and Form 102, Z for post-conquest administrative setup. How long until we can begin operations? Pending final approvals and assuming no complications from the Interdimensional Safety Board, we should be ready for Phase 1 in approximately 14 standard cycles. Clix announced. Perfect. Blisk stamped another document with a kind of satisfaction that only comes from completing paperwork. Mark Earth as Class C agricultural world with minimal resistance potential and schedule it for next quarter's acquisition cycle. This should be our smoothest operation yet. He turned back to his display, where Earth continued its peaceful rotation, its inhabitants completely unaware that they had just been classified, categorized, and scheduled for conquest with the same casual efficiency most beings reserve for ordering lunch. In the distance, a cosmic bureaucrat filed another form, and somewhere in the universe, Murphy's Law began to chuckle quietly to itself. 14 standard cycles later, the Zephyrian conquest fleet materialized above Earth's largest population centers with all the theatrical flair of a budget space opera. Commander Bliss had insisted on following Protocol 12A to the letter. Massive ships positioned for maximum psychological impact, synchronized light displays that spelled out surrender in 17 different languages, and ominous humming sounds that were scientifically designed to inspire dread. The humans' response was not what the Galactic Conquest Manual had prepared them for. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Zet, his voice carrying the kind of bewilderment typically reserved for discovering that your insurance doesn't cover interdimensional incidents. "We're receiving thousands of incoming transmissions from the surface." "Excellent," Bliss replied, settling into his command chair with practiced authority. Patched through their surrender negotiations. The main screen flickered to life, revealing not a trembling planetary leader, but a middle-aged human in pajamas, holding what appeared to be a small rectangular device. "Yeah, hi. Is this a new drone delivery service?" the human asked, squinting at the screen. "Because your website said 30 minutes or less, and it's been like 45 minutes since I ordered my pizza. Also, your delivery drones are way bigger than I expected. Are you compensating for something?" Blisk's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Surrender negotiations," he whispered urgently to Zed. "Ask him about surrender negotiations." "Surrender?" The human laughed. "Look, buddy, I'm not surrendering my Friday night pizza to anyone. The coupon clearly states satisfaction guaranteed, and I haven't seen any satisfaction yet. Do you have any idea what it's like to wait for food when you've got the munchies and the latest season of Cosmic Bakers is starting?" Before Bliss could respond, 17 more communication windows opened simultaneously. Each showed a different human, all apparently under the impression that the invasion fleet was either a very elaborate food delivery service, a new streaming entertainment platform, or possibly both. "This isn't in the manual," Clicks whispered, frantically flipping to the official guide to planetary conquest, Standard Edition. Section 4.7 covers unexpected resistance, but there's nothing about pizza-related confusion. The situation deteriorated rapidly when the humans began rating the invasion fleet's performance. Within minutes, they had somehow created what they called reviews and were sharing them across their global communication network. 1 star, read Communications Officer Zet from the incoming data stream. Quote, "Impressive light show, but terrible customer service. Still waiting for my double pepperoni. Would not recommend to friends. Also, why do your delivery people look like crystalline praying mantises?" End quote. "Sir," Intelligence Specialist Thorpe interrupted, his usually composed demeanor cracking like cheap armor. "I'm detecting widespread chemical warfare deployment across the planet's surface." Blisk straightened. Finally, something the manual covered. Defensive measures. Activate atmospheric filters. "Sir, the chemical appears to be caffeine. Concentrated caffeine in liquid form. The humans appear to be consuming it voluntarily and in massive quantities. On the view screen, humans could be seen emerging from buildings carrying steaming cups, their eyes taking on a manic gleam that would have impressed professional warriors. They move with the kind of focus intensity typically associated with elite military units, except they were wearing fuzzy slippers and arguing about something called oat milk. They're mobilizing," Vorthak observed, adjusting his evolutionary spectacles. "But not in any pattern our computers recognize. It's as if they're conducting military operations while simultaneously reviewing breakfast options." The humans have begun gathering in groups, pointing at the ships while consuming their chemical stimulants. Some were holding up small devices, apparently documenting the event for posterity or possibly litigation purposes. "Sir," Zet reported, his voice reaching new octaves of confusion, "one of their communication networks is asking if we accept their local currency for payment, and another wants to know if we're hiring. Apparently, our aesthetic is totally on brand for something called gig economy disruption." Blisk stared at the chaotic scene below, where humans continued their incomprehensible routines, while occasionally waving at the invasion fleet like neighbors greeting each other over a cosmic fence. "Get me Chapter 15 of the manual," he said quietly. "The section on when everything goes wrong." "Sir," Clicks replied after a moment of frantic searching, That chapter appears to be missing. There's just a page that says good luck in 14 languages. By the third day of the invasion, Blisk had developed what his species' medical officers would later classify as an acute case of bureaucratic stress syndrome. The humans had not only failed to surrender, they had somehow turned the conquest into a customer service experience that made Zephyrian red tape look like a streamlined efficiency model. Perhaps we should try the traditional approach, suggested Vorthak, consulting his cost-benefit analysis charts. Standard slave acquisition protocols. Simple, direct, effective. Blisk nodded wearily. Deploy the collection teams. Standard operation. Identify leadership structures. Process acquisition paperwork. Begin transportation procedures. The collection teams descended to Earth's surface with military precision, armed with portable processing stations and Form 663D, Universal Conscription Notice. They had successfully enslaved 127 civilizations using these exact methods. Earth, they assumed, would be number 128. They were wrong. The first team landed outside what their scanners had identified as a major administrative center. Within minutes, they found themselves face-to-face with a small human wearing a badge that read Municipal Permit Processing Department and an expression that suggested she had seen everything the universe could throw at her and found it mildly irritating. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, examining the towering alien warriors with the same enthusiasm most beings reserve for expired yogurt. "We are here to process your planet for conscription," announced Team Leader Grix, holding up his official documentation. "You will comply or face the consequences." "I'll need to see your permits," the human replied, pulling out a clipboard that seemed to materialize from nowhere. "Extraterrestrial visitation requires Form 27B, filed in triplicate. Planetary conscription falls under Municipal Ordinance 847.2, which requires environmental impact assessment, public notice period, and approval from the Department of Tourism. Did you submit your EIA?" Grix stared at the clipboard. In 17 successful campaigns, no one had ever asked him about environmental impact assessments. "We conquer planets," he said slowly. "We do not file environmental impact assessments." "Then I'm afraid you'll need to speak with the Quantum Litigation Department," the human said, stamping a form with practice efficiency. "They handle all disputes involving non-terrestrial entities. Take a number." She handed Grix a small paper ticket. Number 2,847,394. The digital display showed they were currently serving number 3. Meanwhile, across the planet, other collection teams were encountering similar difficulties. One team had been attempting to contact Earth's central command structure for 6 hours, only to find themselves trapped in an automated phone system that offered options in languages that didn't exist and hold music that was apparently designed to induce temporal displacement. "Thank you for calling Earth Customer Service," the recording announced for the 4,000th time. "Your call is important to us. Please hold for the next available representative. Current wait time is calculating. Please continue to hold." Communications officers that had been monitoring the situation from orbit, his tentacles increasingly frayed with each passing hour. "Sir, I'm detecting massive information warfare deployment. The humans appear to have weaponized their social communication networks." "Explain," Blisk ordered, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to hear the answer. "They've created what they call hashtags and viral content about our invasion. Our ships are being rated, reviewed, and somehow turned into what they call memes. Half the planet is now convinced we're part of an elaborate marketing campaign for something called Independence Day 3, the bureaucratic menace." The main screen showed a compilation of human-generated content. Images of their ships had been modified with captions like, "When your DoorDash driver takes the scenic route," and "POV, you're waiting for customer service to pick up." Somehow, the humans had turned their invasion into entertainment. "Furthermore," Zek continued, his voice reaching new heights of bewilderment, "they've begun organizing what they call flash mobs around our ships. Large groups of humans are gathering to perform synchronized movements while holding signs that say things like, 'Welcome to Earth. Please tip your server,' and 'Have you tried turning your invasion off and on again?'" Vorthak looked up from his calculations. his evolutionary spectacles reflecting data streams that made no sense according to any known mathematical principles. The economic implications are staggering. They've somehow monetized our conquest attempt. 3 humans have already filed patents on alien invasion tourism and started selling what they call "I survived the Zephyrian invasion" merchandise. Sir, intelligence specialist Thorpe reported, his usual composure completely shattered. I've just intercepted a communication from something called the Department of Interdimensional Relations. They're requesting that we submit our invasion proposal to what they call a public comment period and attend a town hall meeting next Thursday at 7 p.m. in the community center. Blisk stared at the reports accumulating on his desk. In his 23 years of military service, he had never encountered a species that responded to conquest by asking for permits, creating entertainment content, and scheduling meetings. "Get me the manual," he said quietly. "All of it, every volume. And send a priority message to headquarters. Tell them we may need backup." "Sir," Clix asked hesitantly, "what should I put as a reason for backup request?" Blisk looked at the screen showing humans cheerfully waving at his ships while selling alien-themed snacks to tourists. "Put down cultural incompatibility," he said, "and add a note. Situation may require specialists in advanced bureaucratic warfare." What the Zephyrians didn't realize was that their arrival had triggered something unprecedented in human history: the spontaneous formation of an alliance between the world's most irritating bureaucrats and its most creatively destructive problem solvers. This coalition emerged not through any grand design or heroic leadership, but through the simple human instinct to turn any crisis into an opportunity to avoid doing actual work. The unofficial headquarters of this resistance movement was a coffee shop in downtown Portland called Procrastination Station, where a woman known only as a coordinator had been perfecting the art of productive delay for 15 years. She ran a consulting firm that specialized in helping people avoid making decisions, and her clients included 3 Fortune 500 companies and the entire municipal government of Milwaukee. "So let me get this straight," she said, addressing the unlikely assembly gathered around mismatched tables. "These aliens want to enslave us, but they're following proper bureaucratic procedures?" "Exactly," replied a man called Doc, who held advanced degrees in theoretical mathematics and applied time-wasting. "They've filed for permits. They're following protocols. They're essentially trying to conquer us through paperwork." A third member of the group, known simply as a specialist due to her ability to turn any conversation into an hour-long discussion about nothing in particular, leaned forward with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for discovering a new way to procrastinate. "This is beautiful. They're playing our game without realizing it's our game." The coordinator nodded slowly. "What if we don't resist them? What if we help them? What if we make their bureaucratic process so thorough, so complete, so absolutely perfect that it never actually ends?" Within hours, word had spread to what humans had christened the Delay Network, an informal communication system that connected every person who had ever successfully postponed a deadline until it became someone else's problem. The message was simple: the aliens needed help with their paperwork, and humanity was uniquely qualified to provide it. The first major engagement occurred when a Zephyrian collection team attempted to process the population of downtown Seattle. They arrived with their standard forms, expecting to complete the operation within 6 standard time units. Instead, they encountered what would later be known in military history as the Great Paperwork Offensive. Team leader Grix found himself facing a human who introduced himself as Municipal Process Engineer, a man who had once delayed a city council vote for 3 years by asking increasingly specific questions about the definition of the word. "I see you have Form 663D here," the engineer said, examining the alien documentation with microscopic attention. "But this appears to be the standard format, not the Earth-specific version. You'll need Form 663D Terra, which requires supplemental documentation, including Form 12X, Environmental, Form 44, Cultural Impact, and a letter of intent filed with the Interdimensional Commerce Department." "We do not have an Interdimensional Commerce Department," Grix replied, his mandibles beginning to twitch. "Oh, but you do now," the engineer said cheerfully. "We created it this morning. Very efficient organization. They're located in Building C, Subbasement 7, Room 404. Office hours are Tuesdays and alternating Fridays, by appointment only. Would you like me to schedule you an appointment? Meanwhile, across the city, other humans have begun deploying what military analysts would later classify as weaponized small talk. Zephyrian warriors, trained for combat against energy weapons and particle beams, found themselves completely defenseless against humans who want to discuss the weather. Lovely day, isn't it? One human said to a confused alien soldier. Though I hear it might rain later. Do you get rain on your planet? What's the weather like there? Oh, you don't have weather? That must be interesting. How do you plan your outdoor activities? Do you have outdoor activities? What do you do for fun? Are you enjoying your visit to Earth? Have you tried our coffee? You really should try our coffee. It's locally sourced, very sustainable. Do you have sustainability on your planet? The alien warrior, programmed for efficiency and direct action, began experiencing what his onboard medical systems classified as cognitive overflow error. Within minutes, he was involuntarily sharing details about his childhood, his career aspirations, and his concerns about the rising cost of interdimensional fuel. But the human's secret weapon was still being deployed. Dr. Temporal, a physicist who had discovered that procrastination actually created small tears in space-time, had been working with a coordinator to develop what they call the indefinite postponement protocol. You see, Dr. Temporal explained to a rapidly growing crowd of resistance members, when humans procrastinate, we don't just delay things in linear time. We create temporal loops, recursive delays, and what I call bureaucratic black holes, pockets of space-time where processes begin but never actually finish. The proof came when a Zephyrian administrative team attempted to file their conquest completion report. They submitted it to the newly created Earth Processing Center, where it was immediately assigned a case number and placed in a queue for initial review. The queue, however, existed in a temporal paradox created by the combined procrastination of 12 professional deadline avoiders working in perfect synchronization. Your application is being processed. The automated system informed the aliens. Current estimated processing time is calculating please wait, still calculating thank you for your patience. The calculation had been running for 72 hours and counting. Vorthak, monitoring the situation from orbit, watched his carefully constructed timelines dissolve into what his evolutionary accountant brain could only classify as mathematical impossibility. Sir, he reported to Blisk, his voice carrying the kind of bewilderment usually reserved for discovering that the universe's books don't balance. The humans have somehow bureaucratized our bureaucracy. They've out-administered our administration. They've created a system so efficient at being inefficient that it's achieved perfect inefficiency, which, according to my calculations, should be impossible. Blisk stared at the report streaming in from the surface. His teams weren't being defeated. They were being helped to death. The emergency transmission from the Zephyrian High Command arrived with the kind of cosmic urgency typically reserved for supernovae or tax audits. Blisk found himself explaining to Admiral Vexthal, a being whose patients had been surgically removed for efficiency purposes, why a simple Class C agricultural world acquisition had somehow become a military equivalent of trying to nail gelatin to a wall. Back up. Admiral Vexthal's voice carried across subspace with the subtle warmth of absolute zero. You need backup? For a planet whose most advanced technology is electronic mail. Sir, the situation has evolved beyond standard parameters, Bliss replied, trying to maintain professional composure while watching his latest status report get automatically forwarded to 17 different human departments for further review. We require specialists in advanced bureaucratic counter-operations. Very well. I'm dispatching the crystalline hive mind of Zirian 7 and a diplomatic flotilla from the Gas Giant Collective. If primitive bureaucracy is your problem, the hive mind will solve it. They perfected efficiency to 17 decimal places. The crystalline hive mind arrived in ships that were geometric perfection made manifest, each vessel a flawless polyhedron that existed in perfect mathematical harmony with its neighbors. The hive mind itself was a collective consciousness of 7 million beings who had achieved perfect organizational unity through the simple expedient of eliminating all individual thought, personal preferences, and the concept of maybe later. Primary node Zeta Alpha 7742 materialized in Blisk's command center with the kind of precision that made Swiss clockwork look sloppy. "We have analyzed your situation," it announced in perfectly synchronized harmony. "Your error was in allowing inefficiency to propagate. We will implement perfect systematic order." The gas giant floaters arrived in what could generously be called ships, though they more closely resembled enormous soap bubbles filled with swirling atmospheric phenomena. They communicated entirely through changes in air pressure, temperature fluctuations, and what their species considered the height of eloquence, interpretive weather patterns. Ambassador cumulonimbus, a rough translation of a concept that actually involves 17 different types of atmospheric disturbance, expressed their readiness to assist through a series of elegant storm formations that spelled out, "We are here to help," in cloud formations visible from space. The combined alien task force descended upon Earth with the confidence of beings who had successfully imposed order upon chaos across 17 different galaxy clusters. They were about to discover that human chaos operated by rules that predated logic itself. The crystalline hive mind's first action was to establish what they called perfect processing centers, geometric marvels of efficiency designed to process human conscription requests in under 3.7 standard time units per individual. They had not anticipated the coordinator's counter-strategy. "Oh, these are beautiful," she told primary node Zeta, Alpha, 7742, examining the crystalline structures with the kind of appreciation usually reserved for fine art. "But I'm afraid there's a problem with the feng shui." "Feng shui." The hive mind's 7 million voices asked in perfect unison, creating a harmony that accidentally shattered several nearby windows. "It's an ancient human science," the coordinator explained, pulling out a clipboard that seemed to generate its own bureaucratic gravity field. "All structures must be in harmony with the natural energy flows of the environment. Your processing centers are creating what we call block chi, which violates Municipal Ordinance 847.3 b regarding spiritual environmental impact." Within hours, the hive mind found itself redesigning their perfect geometric structures to accommodate something called energy flow optimization, which required each building to be slightly asymmetrical, painted in colors that promoted positive vibes, and oriented according to a complex system that seemed to change every time someone looked at it. Meanwhile, the gas giant floaters had attempted to establish diplomatic contact with human leadership through their traditional method of atmospheric pressure negotiation. They created a magnificent display of controlled weather patterns above the United Nations building, spelling out their terms for a peaceful surrender in 17 different cloud formations. The humans responded by teaching them about email. "This is fascinating," Dr. Temper explained to Ambassador cumulonimbus, who was currently manifesting as a small indoor thunderstorm contained within a glass conference room. "But have you considered the efficiency advantages of electronic communication?" The specialist, present as the Earth's unofficial ambassador conversational delay, began demonstrating what she called professional email etiquette to the assembled alien diplomats. "You see, the key is in the tone," she explained, typing on a laptop while the various aliens watched in fascination. "You can't just say what you mean directly. You have to be politely passive-aggressive. For example, instead of, 'You have failed to comply with our demands,' you write, 'I hope this email finds you well. I wanted to circle back on our previous conversation regarding compliance. Per my last email, as discussed, please advise on the status of the aforementioned compliance issues at your earliest convenience." The gas giant floaters, who had evolved communication into an art form involving interpretive atmospheric pressure changes, found themselves attempting to translate passive-aggressive email syntax into weather patterns. The results were meteorologically unprecedented and diplomatically catastrophic. Ambassador cumulonimbus's attempt to send a "per my last email" message to the crystalline hive mind resulted in a localized weather system that passive-aggressively rained only on geometric structures, while creating tiny storm clouds that spelled out "es discussed" in 17 different languages. The hive mind, interpreting this as either an insult or an advanced mathematical theorem, responded by reorganizing their entire fleet into formations that spelled out "please advise" in perfect crystalline geometry, which the gas giant floaters took as a challenge to their atmospheric artistry. But the real disaster occurred when the combined alien communication systems encountered Earth's Wi-Fi network. "Sir," Communications officers that reported, his voice reaching frequencies previously thought impossible. We have a problem. The human's primitive communication network is somehow interfering with our faster-than-light communication systems. Interfering how? Blisk asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know. It's trying to get them to agree to terms and conditions. All of them. Every ship in the fleet is now being asked to accept cookies, update their privacy settings, and rate their experience with Earth's customer service. The situation escalated when the crystalline hive mind's perfect geometric communication array attempted to process a software update from Windows 95, causing what their technical specialists classified as mathematical impossibility cascade failure. 7 million voices simultaneously asking, "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" created a harmonic resonance that briefly opened a portal to what appeared to be customer service hell. The gas giant floaters, attempting to communicate their frustration through interpreted weather patterns, accidentally created what Earth's meteorologists would later classify as the universe's first passive-aggressive hurricane, which specifically avoided causing any actual damage while making everyone feel vaguely guilty about something they couldn't quite identify. Meanwhile, the municipal process engineer had been busy filing what he called proper diplomatic protest forms with the newly established Department of Extraterrestrial Relations. The forms, which required detailed environmental impact statements for each alien ship, had somehow triggered the universe's first interdimensional class action lawsuit. "Congratulations," the coordinator announced to the assembled alien leadership during what had become a daily briefing that somehow never actually briefed anyone about anything. "You're now being sued by 17 different dimensional jurisdictions for violations of the Universal Fair Practices Act, which we created this morning. The good news is that litigation will only take approximately 400 standard years to resolve, assuming no appeals." Blisk stared at the legal documents that had somehow materialized on his desk, despite being filed in dimensions that didn't technically exist yet. "Get me Admiral Vexthal," he said quietly. "Tell him we need to discuss alternative strategies." The revelation came to Blisk during what humans had euphemistically termed a progress review meeting, a gathering that had been scheduled to last 30 minutes and was now entering its fourth day. He sat in a conference room that had somehow expanded beyond its original dimensions, listening to the coordinator explain why their conquest completion timeline needed to be right-sized for optimal stakeholder engagement. "You see," she was saying, gesturing at a chart that appeared to exist in several dimensions simultaneously, "we've identified some key pain points in your current acquisition methodology. The good news is that we developed a synergistic approach that will streamline your conquest process while maximizing efficiency metrics." It was at this moment that Bliss experienced what xenopsychologists would later classify as cosmic enlightenment through bureaucratic horror. The humans weren't resisting their conquest. They were improving it. They had taken the Zephyrian military's most efficient processes and somehow made them so efficient that they had transcended the need to actually accomplish anything. "We need to activate the nuclear option," he told Vorthak during a brief recess that had lasted 6 hours and counting. "Sir, we don't have nuclear weapons," Vorthak replied, his evolutionary spectacles reflecting data streams that had given up trying to make sense. "Not nuclear weapons," Blisk said grimly. "Operation Infinite Redirect." The humans had been waiting for this moment. The specialist, working in coordination with a shadowy figure known only as the middle manager, had spent weeks preparing what they called the Ultimate Customer Experience Optimization Initiative. Within hours, every alien request, demand, complaint, or communication was automatically redirected to what appeared to be a customer satisfaction survey. The system was so elegantly designed that it was impossible to complete any task without first rating your experience on a scale of 1 to 10, explaining why you chose that rating, and suggesting improvements for future interactions. "How would you rate your overall conquest experience today?" The survey asked primary node Zeta Alpha 7742. "What could we have done differently to better meet your planetary subjugation needs? Would you recommend Earth to other conquering civilizations? Please explain your answer." The crystalline hive mind, which had achieved perfect efficiency by eliminating all unnecessary thought processes, found itself paralyzed by the philosophical implications of rating its own conquest experience. 7 million voices began debating whether "somewhat satisfied" was mathematically equivalent to 6.7 or 6.8 on a 10-point scale. But the humans' true secret weapon was only now being deployed. The middle manager emerged from what appeared to be a temporal fold in the space-time continuum, carrying a briefcase that seemed to contain more paperwork than physically possible, and wearing an expression of such profound middle management authority that reality itself began to defer to his organizational chart. "I understand there have been some concerns about our current processes," he announced to the assembled alien leadership. "I prepared a presentation that I think will address everyone's needs." The PowerPoint presentation that followed would later be studied by xenosociologists as the moment when human bureaucracy achieved sentience and began reproducing independently. The slides contained concepts that didn't exist in any known language, organizational charts that formed closed loops through dimensions that hadn't been discovered yet, and bullet points that somehow bulleted themselves. As you can see from slide 47, the middle manager continued, clicking through what appeared to be an infinite presentation. Our current conquest paradigm creates unnecessary friction in the stakeholder engagement pipeline. What I'm proposing is a holistic approach that leverages synergistic collaboration frameworks to optimize the planetary acquisition experience for all parties involved. Ambassador Cumulonimbus attempted to express confusion through interpretive weather patterns, but found that the presentation was somehow generating its own climate system. Slide 73 had created a small indoor tornado that was reorganizing itself into pie charts. The Zephyrian military leadership watched in growing horror as their carefully planned conquest transformed into what the middle manager called a collaborative partnership opportunity with scalable growth potential. Their invasion had become a business proposal, complete with quarterly review periods and performance metrics. "I don't understand," Vorthak whispered, his evolutionary accounting instincts completely overwhelmed. "How is this possible? We have the superior technology, the larger fleet, the more advanced civilization. How are they doing this to us?" Blisk stared at slide 127, which appeared to be explaining how their conquest could be optimized through agile methodologies and cross-functional team integration. The slide was somehow arguing with itself about the definition of synergy, while simultaneously creating a Gantt chart that extended into next Tuesday. "They've weaponized inefficiency," he realized. "They've turned the avoidance of work into an actual form of work that prevents all other work from being accomplished as beautiful. It's horrible. It's the most advanced form of warfare I've ever encountered." The presentation continued. Slide 203 introduced something called matrix management, which appeared to be an organizational structure designed to ensure that no one was ever actually responsible for anything while everyone was technically responsible for everything. The gas giant floaters began expressing existential dread through increasingly abstract cloud formations. "Sir," communications officers that reported, his voice breaking across several octaves, "Admiral Vextel is requesting an immediate status update. He wants to know when we can expect conquest completion." Blisk looked at the aliens around him, all trapped in a meeting that had somehow become self-sustaining, listening to a presentation about optimizing their own defeat while filling out customer satisfaction surveys about the experience. "Tell the Admiral," he said slowly, "that we may need to reconsider our entire approach to galactic conquest." "Sir, tell him we're learning things about the nature of civilization that our military academies never prepared us for." On the screen, slide 847 began explaining how their invasion could benefit from stakeholder feedback integration and collaborative consensus-building methodologies. Blisk realized that somewhere along the way, the humans had made their conquest into a joint venture, #climax, the battle nobody expected. The interdimensional conference room materialized around them with the soul-crushing familiarity of every corporate meeting space that had ever existed. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting that hummed with malevolent intent, and a table so aggressively oval it seemed designed to eliminate all hope of productive discourse. The only difference was that this particular conference room existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, which explained why the motivational posters kept shifting between teamwork and what appeared to be Lovecraftian tentacles spelling out synergy in dead languages. Commander ZYX Thrall of the Galactic Dominion stood at the head of the table, his forearms spread wide in what his species considered a gesture of supreme authority. Before him lay the instruments of corporate warfare, a laptop displaying spreadsheets so complex they violated several laws of mathematics, organizational charts that formed non-Euclidean geometries, and a PowerPoint presentation titled Earth Acquisition, Q4 deliverables and beyond. Humans of Earth, ZYX Thrall announced, his voice echoing with the confidence of someone who had never sat through a 3-hour budget meeting. We have gathered here to discuss the terms of your surrender. As you can see from slide 1. Point of order, interrupted Janet from HR, raising her hand with the practiced precision of someone who had weaponized Robert's rules. Are we following standard meeting protocol? Because I don't see an agenda, and frankly, this feels like it should have been an email. The alien commander blinked all 6 of his eyes in confusion. This is conquest, not email. Right, but have you considered the optics? Asked Brad from marketing, sliding a laminated org chart across the interdimensional table. Because according to our recent employee satisfaction survey, 73% of humanity feels that traditional conquest methods are outdated. What we're looking at here is a real opportunity for disruption in the subjugation space. ZYX Thrall stared at the org chart, which somehow depicted the chain of command for Earth's surrender using a combination of flowcharts, Venn diagrams, and what appeared to be a decision tree that had achieved sentience. What is the subjugation space? Well, said Karen from operations, pulling up her own presentation on a tablet that materialized from thin air. We've actually been beta testing subjugation for decades now. Student loans, health insurance. HOA meetings, we've essentially gamified our own oppression. Gold-level subscribers get premium suffering experiences, and our platinum tier includes existential dread with same-day delivery. The alien's mandibles clicked together in what could have been either confusion or admiration. You've monetized despair? Oh, that's just the tip of the iceberg, beamed Todd from finance, unfurling a spreadsheet that existed in 11 dimensions and somehow calculated quarterly projections for human misery. We've got subscription models for everything now. Want to breathe clean air? That's the Environmental Plus package. Need actual health care? Premium tier. Basic human dignity? Sorry, that's been discontinued. But we can offer you the Dignity Classic experience for just $29.99 a month. Commander ZYX Thrall sat down heavily in his chair, which had been ergonomically designed for creatures with entirely different anatomical structures. But we were supposed to conquer you. We have death rays. We have planet-destroying weapons. We have you considered a hostile takeover instead? Asked Janet, sliding a manila folder across the table. Much more efficient. Less paperwork with the Galactic Ethics Committee. And frankly, we've been preparing for this merger for years. The folder contained documentation so thoroughly bureaucratic that it caused a small tear in space-time. Inside were forms for interdimensional tax compliance, alien resources integration protocols, and a comprehensive benefits package that somehow included dental coverage for species that didn't have teeth. Look, said Brad, pointing to a motivational poster that now read, "Embrace change" in both English and what appeared to be mathematical equations. Here's the thing about humans, we've already figured out how to make slavery look like career advancement. You want to subjugate us? We'll make it a team-building exercise. We'll create performance metrics for oppression. We'll have quarterly reviews for our own exploitation. ZYX Thrall's chief strategist, a being that resembled a filing cabinet with existential anxiety, leaned over to whisper, "Sir, they've somehow turned surrender into a promotion opportunity." The commander looked around the table at the assembled humans, each armed with laptops, tablets, and a dead-eyed stare of people who had survived decades of quarterly earnings calls. They sat there with the patience of those who had weathered countless meetings that could have been emails, their spirits unbroken not because they were heroes, but because corporate life had already broken them in ways that made traditional conquest seem almost quaint. "So," asked Karen, clicking her pen with the rhythm of a ticking bomb, "should we schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss the deliverables?" And in that moment, Commander ZYX Thrall realized that humanity had achieved something no other species in the galaxy had managed. They had made conquest boring. The universe's first hostile takeover had begun, and it would be conducted entirely through committee meetings. #resolution and cosmic consequences. 3 months after the universe's most anticlimactic invasion, Commander ZYX Thrall sat in his newly assigned cubicle on Sublevel 7 of the Galactic Corporate Headquarters, staring at a performance review form that had somehow achieved a level of bureaucratic complexity that violated the laws of physics. The motivational poster above his desk, which he'd been required to hang as part of his cultural integration training, now read, "Hang in there" in 17 languages, including several that his species hadn't invented yet. "I don't understand," he muttered to his assistant, a former death ray technician who now went by Brenda and had somehow acquired a coffee addiction. "We had planet crackers. We had antimatter bombs. We had—" "Sir," Brenda interrupted, adjusting her newly issued reading glasses, "the quarterly reports are due by 5. And honestly, after that sensitivity training seminar, I'm starting to think the humans might have been onto something with this whole structured oppression model." The Zephyrian Empire's board of directors had reached their decision with the swift efficiency of a committee trying to adjourn before lunch. Slavery was simply too much administrative overhead. The humans had presented a counterproposal so thoroughly researched and cross-referenced that it had caused 2 junior executives to have nervous breakdowns. Earth would become the galaxy's first mutually beneficial exploitation zone, complete with performance-based incentive structures and a comprehensive benefits package that somehow made subjugation look like a career opportunity. Within weeks, the model had spread across the galaxy like a particularly virulent strain of corporate restructuring. The warlike Corthans had traded their battle axes for business cards. The hive mind collectors had discovered the existential horror of individual performance reviews. Even the ancient machine intelligence of Zirian Prime had been somehow convinced to implement casual Fridays. "The beautiful thing," Janet from HR explained during her weekly galactic orientation seminar, "is that everyone wins. Well, except for everyone, but they win in a structured, measurable way that can be documented for tax purposes." The success was so overwhelming that human management consultants were now being dispatched to struggling civilizations across 17 star systems. The Andromedans had recently signed a franchise agreement for their own mutually beneficial exploitation zone, complete with branded motivational posters and a 401k plan that defied several fundamental laws of economics. Commander ZYX Thrall had just begun to adapt to his new reality when his desk phone rang with a distinctive tone that meant someone from upper management wanted to discuss his deliverables. "ZYX Thrall speaking," he answered, his voice carrying the weary resignation of someone who had learned to fear the phrase "circle back." "Commander," came the voice of Supreme Admiral Court Hawks, "we need to talk. It turns out there's been a slight miscommunication regarding our Earth operation." "Miscommunication?" "Well, yes. It seems the invasion was never actually authorized. The whole thing started when Junior Technician Blimph accidentally activated the long-range communications array while trying to reach Earth about their planet's extended warranty." ZYX Thrall stared at his computer screen, where a spreadsheet was calculating the cost-benefit analysis of his own existence. "You're telling me we accidentally conquered ourselves because of a warranty call?" "Conquered is a strong word. I prefer synergistically integrated. Besides, the humans are offering us a very competitive package for galactic expansion. Apparently, they're looking at the Centauri system for their next franchise location." Through his office window, ZYX Thrall could see Earth in the distance, its blue surface now dotted with interdimensional office complexes, and what appeared to be the galaxy's first drive-through subjugation center. Somewhere down there, humans were probably holding meetings about how to optimize the conquest experience for customer satisfaction. "Sir," Brendan knocked on his cubicle wall, "your 3 o'clock meeting with the efficiency optimization team is here. They want to discuss your personal growth trajectory." Commander ZYX Thrall sighed, straightened his tie when had he started wearing a tie, and prepared to face the cosmic horror of another performance review. Somewhere in the distance, he could swear he heard the sound of humans opening another franchise on a previously unconquered world, spreading their particular brand of weaponized bureaucracy one quarterly report at a time. The galaxy would never be the same, and somehow that was exactly according to plan.